Live from Greenville, North Carolina, the Fambulance crew has assembled for Week 0. UNC Tar Heels versus Florida A&M, the Rattlers. 8:15 Eastern Standard Time this Saturday, August 27th, 2022 in Kenan Stadium, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I'm Tim Birch, and joining me as always, John Knuckles, Kent Griffin. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Man, I'm glad to be here.
Looking forward to some football.
It is always football, is it not?
It is always football season, and hello out there to Chiefs Kingdom and every football fan who might be watching.
Fantastic. Well, we are at Local Oak Brewery in Winterville, North Carolina. Behind us is the Fambulance. This is the ride we take all around the country, visiting cities and towns just like yours, so we can see how you tailgate and what you love about your team and your town. Kent, tell us where we're headed this week.
We're going a little ways down the road, a couple hours, Jim, to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, UNC, the flagship of the university system here in North Carolina. We're looking forward to it. It's only a couple hours, and it's a smaller city, but their reputation far exceeds. So this is big-time football. We're looking forward to it.
Fantastic.
Quintessential college town. There's no better college town anywhere in North America. I'll stand on that.
Says somebody who might have an affinity for Chapel Hill.
I may have spent a few minutes there, but that's okay.
All right. Well, tell us about the conferences, John. What are we talking about with UNC and Florida A&M this week?
Yeah, and North Carolina Tar Heels coming out of the ACC Power 5 Conference, coming off of a 6-7 season last year. They ended up with a losing record because of a loss in a bowl game. Didn't meet expectations. They really thought they were going to have a better season, especially with Sam Howell at the helm at quarterback. He has since graduated and moved on to the Washington Redskins, so now they're replacing quarterback coming into the season. And then on the other side of the field, you've got the Willie Simmons-led Florida A&M Rattlers. 9-3 last year, playoff participant in the FCS, and one of the better HBCU teams, if not the best one last year, and won their SWAC conference last year as well.
That's
something
right.
they have a history of.
Just coming out of the Eastern Athletic Conference. This is a storied program, John, Kent.
Right.
This is led by Jack Gaither back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. This is a program with 37 conference championships, 16 HBCU championships, 2021 being the last one where they did power ranking for the HBCU teams. Speaking of the 2021 season, that produced the Buck Buchanan Award winner, Isaiah Land, the most outstanding defensive player, D1 FCS program. Yeah. Tell us about that. Why is that so interesting, Buck Buchanan Award?
Well, again, we're kind of part of Chiefs Kingdom, and anybody in Chiefs Kingdom knows who Buck Buchanan was. He played in HBCU and then moved on to the Kansas City Chiefs and played in the late 60s, early 70s, was part of that wrecking crew defense that they had out there. They won a Super Bowl, Super Bowl IV. The late Lenny Dawson, who just passed away today, was the quarterback of that team and certainly the leader for that franchise. But they just had a monster defense with a bunch of Hall of Famers, and Buck Buchanan was one of those guys, just a mammoth of a man. Could just, wreck opposing offenses. You can ask Fran Tarkenton.
6'7", a beast. Inducted into both the College Hall of Fame in 1996 and the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1990.
Yeah, just a heck of a football player and a fan favorite, I think, for all of Kansas Cityans. Growing up in the late 70s and early 80s, he had already stopped playing ball, but his name was always present and still is. I mean, he's still a major factor in Chiefs Kingdom lore, and you're just not going to find a bona fide Chiefs fan that doesn't know who Buck Buchanan is. And pretty soon, most of us are going to know who Isaiah Land is, too.
That's right.
Because number 31 absolutely brings it. That's a guy who had 19.5 sacks last year and 25.5 tackles for loss. And I don't care what league you're playing in, FBS, FCS, Pop Warner, you get 25.5 tackles for loss, you're getting busy.
And people felt it.
Yeah, and he brought it. He's a guy who's built to play in the NFL. They play a little bit of a 34, defense. So he's going to be a guy who, isn't a 4-3 defensive end most likely, but will certainly in a 34 defense could potentially wreak havoc in the NFL, and he's ready to put on a show for some scouts,
Right.
and show that he's worth the money.
Well, this was the 10th ranked defense last year. They lost Marquise Bell to the NFL. Savion Williams no longer with them. But along with Isaiah Land, they've got B.J. Bowler, Justin Cooks, Gentle Hunt,
Yeah.
Stanley Mentor. Tell us about Gentle Hunt. What a name, right?
Yeah, nice name for just a huge man.
Right.
Gentle Hunt and Stanley Mentor are two big guys on the interior defensive line that are going to really give that offensive line in North Carolina is all they can handle if they're not ready to play ball. They can't come out thinking this is going to be an early season cream puff non-conference FCS team, because that's not what Florida A&M is about.
Yeah. I found it interesting. B.J. Bowler's younger brother plays for him too, Kendall.
Yeah.
That's it must be a fun time for them. Can't
Yeah.
get away from each other.
They've got positions where they have real athletes. They've got an All-American candidate on special teams, returning punts. They've got an All-American candidate in the defensive backfield. So they're guys that can come ready to play, and if they're taken lightly, look out.
Yeah. Well, you can't talk about Florida A&M without talking about their famous marching band, the Marching 100. Performed for presidents, Super Bowl to 106 million people. Program hit a snag in 2011 with a hazing incident that resulted in the death of Robert Champion. Shut the program down. Some people went to jail. University officials resigned. But in 2013, the program was reinstated with new rules in place and the focus back on what they do so well, march and entertain audiences everywhere. John, Kent, what do you think? What are you expecting from this marching band?
Well, I don't expect much from marching bands usually. I expect to take the time that they're playing to run up to the bathroom or hit the concession stand, but that's going to be changing a little bit this game, because I'm excited to see what the Marching 100 actually brings. I think they're going to put on a show. They're going to play both before the game and during halftime, and so my whole bathroom concessions strategy is going to have to change a little bit. They're going to play with Carolina, I think, as well as on their own, so that should be fun. And, college football is all about the festivities and the football, right? So adding that to the mix is just going to raise the hype for the whole tailgate, game, everything.
It's going to be exciting to watch.
Yeah, I think seeing them in person is going to be something. I've seen footage, but I understand the energy is just unbelievable what they bring. So they get people out of the stand. And to your point, a lot of people stay in the stands to watch this show. So looking forward to it.
Well, not only will the bands be marching together, but these two teams are going to be facing off. So we've talked a little bit about the Rattlers. Let's talk a little bit about UNC. How about this quarterback position, Sam Howell, John?
Yeah, I mean, you can't lose a guy like Sam Howell, probably the best quarterback in the history of their program, and not be a little bit worried about it. But they got guys they like: Drake May, Jacoby Criswell, and even the true freshman Connor Harrell. Connor played Alabama high school football in the tough divisions. Has shown a lot of talent in the spring and also in training camp, and they like what they see. But I don't know how much time he's going to get. They're going to play him. They're going to give him some experience. But he's probably not going to be vying for the starting job anytime soon, because they like both Criswell and May. And earlier this week, I think Matt Brown went ahead and pulled the trigger and decided that Drake May would be their starting quarterback. All Carolina fans know this, but for the rest of the world, Drake May is the younger brother of Luke May, the guy that was such a great basketball player for the hardcourt Tar Heels, hit the game-winning shot in the NCAA tournament against the Kentucky Wildcats, broke a lot of hearts out there.
Nobody remembers that, John. Nobody remembers that.
No.
You only watched it the one time, right?
Yeah, the one time before I go to bed every night. And anyway, and his dad, Mark May, was a football player. I actually see him around the stadium quite often, and a good football player. And so he has a lot of pedigree. He's been around the North Carolina program all his life. I think he's ready to roll, and that's probably a big reason why Matt chose him. From a talent perspective, they do different things. Jacoby might be a little bit better of an athlete, frankly, and there's not a whole lot of separation there. So I really expect to see a lot of Jacoby Criswell too. That being said, if one guy, whether it's Drake or whether it's Jacoby, one guy gets hot, the way Max says it, I think he's going to be sticking with that hot hand.
He'll play the hot hand every time, don't you think?
I think so.
Well, now let's talk about injuries. We've got Antoine Green, broken collarbone, 5 TDs, 600-plus yards last year, second in receiving yards for the team. They hope to have him back before the Notre Dame game or for the Notre Dame game on September 24th. What are your thoughts about how they deal with that?
Yeah, so first with the wide receivers, I think that's a little bit bigger of the problem because they have somewhat of a thin group there. But everything starts and ends with Josh Downs, All-American wide receiver. He's going to play on Sundays. It's just a matter of matriculating into the draft. He's going to be a high draft pick, and he's going to star for somebody. He has that kind of next-level talent. But, Antoine Green was looked at as that second guy. He had come on last year. They were expecting big things from him this year and really fill that role. And, obviously with the injury, that's a major setback. But, potentially in steps another Green. You have Andre Green, highly talented, highly talented and highly touted, true freshman wide receiver, big body, good hands, has shown out in training camp. And I expect him to hit the playing field earlier than they might have expected otherwise. And then you've got a number of other guys that are also very talented. They just lack experience. The Kobe Paysours, the J.J. Jones, but they're going to get it, and they're going to get it in buckets come Saturday night. So that should be really interesting.
Well, where are the mysteries? Let's talk about some of these other position groups. We've talked about the wide receivers. What about the tight ends, offensive line? What are you expecting there?
Yeah, well, I will say before we go to tight ends, because that's always the most exciting position group on the football field. Everybody knows that. With running back, losing British Brooks, that does hurt them because he was not only their starting running back, who had played really well second half of the season, really tore some teams up, and I think that Carolina expected him to just continue that this season. But he was also a spiritual leader for that team. I mean, he's a guy that walked on to Carolina. And, now by his senior year, he was going to be a captain and their starting running back. And you don't make that kind of progression without impressing a lot of people, including your own teammates. So, from a leadership standpoint, they probably lose more than they do potentially from a talented standpoint because they have some talent in that group.
Elijah Green, they got Jones coming back.
Yeah, DJ Jones will probably start for Carolina. I know he'll start this Saturday, but he may start a few more games after that as well. May start the whole season for all we know, because Elijah Green and Caleb Hood, both good backs that bring different things to the table, have been nicked up in training camp, and that's kind of pushed their playing time down.
Yeah, Elijah Green, speaking of bringing different things to the table, with respect to the passing game, this kid runs routes, catches balls, good on pass protection, went to a high school that had a run all the time offense. Your kind of football, John.
Yeah, love Houston Veer, love the wishbone attack. Let's option that ball, let's run the quarterback, let's do all that old school thing, because I'm an old school kind of guy, you bet.
That being said, they've got 2 freshmen that are lighting things up. Let's talk about them.
Yeah, that's where the mystery comes, and it's not much of a mystery. Those guys are going to play, and they're going to play early and they're going to play often because they have a ton of talent. Omarion Hampton has gotten rave reviews in training camp. He's a guy that's built like a brick house, but he runs his tail off. Will run over you, will run around you. He can do it all.
Speed and power.
He's not the guy that you want to meet in the alley. He's the guy you want on your side when you walk into the alley. And then with George Pettaway, highly ranked guy coming out of high school, very nifty in his moves, can slash. He can bring power too. He's not the big body that Hampton is. They're built different, but they bring just a ton of talent in terms of being able to run the ball. So I don't know necessarily that Carolina's worried about running back from a talent standpoint of what they can put on the field. as much as that experience and that leadership, especially with young quarterbacks. So that's kind of where they are in the offensive backfield. Tight end, they got 3 guys. They're going to play them all. Kamari Morales is probably the headliner in that group. John Copenhaver is going to get plenty of time as well. They're both blocking tight ends. Kamari has caught the ball well and certainly made some plays for the Tar Heels last year. The guy that's really going to be interesting is Nesbitt. He's a guy that flashed some really good pass catching and route running skill from the tight end position. They can kind of spread him out at times and play him like a big wide receiver. And he has a ton of talent as well. And that's something you're just going to hear me say over and over again, because Mack Brown has recruited really well in the last 3-4 years. And I think these guys are now ready to actually show what he's recruited.
Well, let's talk about this offensive line. They got a new coach this year, right?
Yeah, Jack Bicknell comes over, offensive line coach last year, moved on to Alabama of all the places. It was kind of a head scratcher for a lot of Tar Heel faithful because the offensive line really struggled last year. And, you know, there were some questions about whether or not Stacey Searles might be replaced in fandom. I don't know so much about the coaching staff.
Right.
But instead, he gets hired on by Nick Saban, of all people, and that creates a job opening. And it's filled by a guy that has a ton of experience at every level, and Jack McNeil. And I think they're really excited with what he's doing with this offensive line. But at the end of the day, the offensive line has to show up, has to be ready to play, and has to produce. It has to be technical about what they're doing and not just think that they can line up on the field and block anybody who's running a stunt, because they couldn't last year.
Yeah.
You know, they couldn't handle twists, they couldn't handle stunts, and Sam Howell got pummeled because of it. They're going to have to gel quickly. They've got transfers coming in along the line. They've got a lot of mix-up. They've got some young guys who might get some playing time, but they've got it settled in terms of who their starting 5 is going into Saturday, and hopefully they'll be ready to roll.
Well, with these position groups, you know, we've covered a lot of them, but I got to ask you, what position group do you like, John? What are you most excited about?
I'm a defensive guy.
Yeah.
So,
at least one position group we haven't talked about.
Well, you know, we like the defensive line. We like the defensive backfield. You know, there's some big names on both levels. But you know, I'm always going to hang my hat on those linebackers.
Yeah.
You know, you've got Cedric Gray and Power Echols starting. Cedric Gray had a great season last year. He's a team captain this year. He's probably going to be the leading tackler. He's got some NFL talent. If he stays consistent and play like he did last year, he's got a chance to play on Sundays. Power Echols is younger. He will play on Sundays.
Yeah.
You know, unless injury or some other thing happens.
This guy's a headhunter, right?
I mean, he's just a natural born hitter.
Yeah.
He brings it. He tackles the right way, but when he does, you know, those guys that are getting tackled, they feel it.
They're going to remember it.
They're gonna be in the tub the next week because he just absolutely kills people. And it's fun to watch. And I think that those guys are going to be bringing it. You got Ra Dilworth as a backup linebacker who's going to be playing a lot and as much as the starters and brings speed to the position. You got a young guy like Sebastian Cheeks out of Chicago who is gotten rave reviews in camp. He's going to get a lot of playing time and he's going to continue, you know, a long line of good linebacking at Carolina. There's a lot of history there with the linebacking crew. There's been some thin years here recently, but it looks like we're getting back to the Mack Brown linebackers of yesteryear, where every year you've got a set of guys who can play in the NFL.
Right. Well, listen, you know, the one thing about this, we've talked a lot about the football game, but another aspect is we so much enjoy is the tailgating. This is a night game. A night game equals big-time tailgate. We're going to be in the Bulls lot. We want you to come and say hi. We're not hard to find. You should be able to see this ride just about anywhere as you travel along your way to the stadium. Friday night, let's talk about where we're going to be. We're going to come visit the fans where they are. So where is that?
Yeah, well, Friday night we're going to be down on Franklin Street. That's where everybody else is probably going to be. And, you know, we'll be up and down that street hitting different restaurants and bars. I think we're going to start over in Carborough, where there's a lot of places where bands play. get a little crazy over there and just work our way from west to east, all the way down to Four Corners at the other end of Franklin Street.
So that's top of the hill. He's
yeah,
not
top Of the
there.
Hill's great. He's
Blue
not.
Cup.
Got to get a Blue Cup, but he's not.
Carolina Brewery, Crunkleton.
Yeah, all of them.
All of them.
All of them.
All of them.
We're gonna hit them all.
Leave no one behind.
We're just gonna start a march and march from one end to the other, and when we get to the end, we're gonna turn around and do the same thing over again.
And I tell you what, we're not the only Saturday game. There's some other games, but one that's particularly exciting is that Northwestern Nebraska game. What's so interesting
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, well, it's, first and foremost, it's in Dublin.
Oh.
What's not
Yeah.
to like about that?
One of our
right?
favorite places in the world.
I know, right?
If we were not in Chapel Hill,
yeah,
We'd be in Dublin.
yeah,
All right.
we'd be having a Guinness and watching Nebraska and Northwestern, a little Big Ten matchup. Go at it. Scott Frost could have a frosty beverage, and we'll see what happens. It should be fun.
all right. Well, we want to. Kent, what are your expectations for the tailgate?
Well, I'm really looking forward to, as you guys know, a big part of why we go hours on the road this season is to meet the people out there, meet you guys. We want to know what jazzes you guys up. We want to know whether it's what you throw on the grill, what you're brewing, what's going on. With breweries like Dingo Dog and Gizmo, you got me intrigued. I'm kind of looking forward to getting there, figuring out what's going on, and hitting
Baby,
all the
my
places.
dingo dog.
Yeah, dingo. Maybe the dingo eat your baby.
Well, we're looking forward to it. We want to know. We want you guys to come. You won't miss us. Want you to come find us, but we're also going to come check you guys out. We're going to see what you got going on. Like I said, what's on the grill, what you're drinking, what you're talking about. Throw us a few stories. Can't wait.
What
Find
you
us.
cooking, what you drinking, and what you
Franklin Street.
playing.
Here we come.
Fambulance Crew out.